Hello everyone, this is Dr. Kathy Marshak for Dr. Kathy's Office Hours, and I'm live and waiting for people to join me. That's good. It's only been live for a few seconds, so it might take a while for people to get the message and come on into the session today. When you do join me, if you could leave a comment that you are hearing me and seeing me. There is one person here so far, so just leave me a little note in the comment section if you can hear me. If you can't, then I'm going to have to reconfigure some things, but I'm using a better microphone and camera than I have in the past because Facebook's lives apparently have been coming through in kind of poor quality, and I hate to do that to you. So I haven't heard from anybody yet, so hopefully people can hear me and see me. Oh good, there's a few more people joining. Let me know if you can hear me. And of course if you can't hear me, then that makes makes it difficult. No messages yet. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of roll along here. I'll repeat everything as soon as more people show up because I know it takes a minute for people to know that I'm live and to get into the session. Today's talk is entitled Betrayed by Those I Love, How Can I Take Back My Life? And of course, this is, oh good, thank you Sherry. You can hear me, good. At least one person can, hopefully others can too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go do a little review of this topic, and then I'll let you know the events that are happening for the month of October, and you're free to give me, write a question or a comment in the comment section. I'll keep looking over there to see if I see anything that I need to respond to. I also put a couple of links in the little write-up here for Facebook. Just 2 links so that you know how to find out more information. These events that I'm telling you about are posted in our meetup group, Asperger Syndrome and Relationships for Partners, Family, and Friends of Adults on the Autism Spectrum. It's kind of a long title. But I put the link in so that you can find the group and join it if you're not a member. And I also put a link in for, let me see here, what was the other link? Oh, I think it might just be, where you can sign up, where you can register for my online recorded course, also for Asperger Syndrome and Relationships. The recorded course is different than Meetup. Meetup is a live group, and we meet and attend these conferences that I'm going to tell you about. I also record the conferences, but confidentially. I don't record your face. I just record the audio, and then we post that in the private group, so you can listen to the recordings again if you're a member, only if you're members. This session, on Facebook though, is a public event, so I want people to know that anybody can attend. You can be on the spectrum, you can be neurotypical, you can just be dropping in because you're curious about what we're talking about. So when you leave a question or a comment, realize that it is a public forum, but there are lots of people who are asking the same questions. So let me get started here. Hopefully there's quite a few people that have joined, and so that's a good thing. Let me know if you have questions or comments, and you can even ask me things that aren't necessarily about this topic, but I think the topic is a big one for our group in neurodivergent relationships. By the way, I use that term to, I use the term neurodiverse for people on the spectrum, and I use neurotypical for non-spectrum people, and then I talk about if you're in a relationship with a neurodiverse and a neurotypical person, you have a neurodivergent relationship. That's how I use these terms. So, and the reason I like that is neurodivergent means that these worlds seem to either be pulling apart or colliding. They're different ways, different worlds, I say different operating systems. So, because of those different operating systems, we have conflicts in communication and even feeling safe in the relationships, emotionally safe. And that's what this topic's about, is betrayed by those I love. So we're going to talk about how come you feel so betrayed by those you love and how to take back your life. We'll talk about the despair of being misunderstood. We'll talk about meltdowns and the silent treatment and how to find better ways to cope. So we feel betrayed for lots of reasons because, this is the complex part, because when you're trying to connect from your operating system and the other person is using a different operating system, it can be emotionally jarring. If the neurodiverse person is trying to understand your words and the neurotypical person is trying to get to what's the underlying meaning, these are different things, right? Words and the underlying meaning may go together, but they don't always go together smoothly. And so it's jarring to be misunderstood, especially by somebody you love. It feels as if you're not safe. We can talk more about that in a little bit. Let me tell you what some of the things are that are happening this month. And like I said, they're also posted on our meetup link. You can click that and go to the meetup group. I offer lots of other services besides meetup and the online course. I have other forums for, the premium group is for people that want to really dig in deeply and attend conferences and read the books and take the online courses. If you're going to inundate yourself, I've got that material too. You can go to those websites and find out more. But if you're just getting started, Meetup is a great place to go because you can kind of dip your toes into this territory of neurodivergent relationships and start learning that you're not alone. Not alone at all. There's lots of us that are sharing this life. So, I'm offering both video conferences and a teleconference every month. There's also webinars for those attending the course. So let me tell you what these all are. The first one in October is called, the title is Ghosted by Asperger's Syndrome, Do You Feel Invisible? That'll be on October 2nd. That's a video conference. And what that's about is that a lot of times neurotypicals feel ghosted by their neurodiverse loved ones because the neurodiverse person is not using the system of connecting with you in order to communicate with you, and so they don't return a text, or they don't return the phone call, or they just get up and walk away in the middle of a conversation. So often people on the spectrum feel invisible, emotionally invisible to their neurodiverse loved ones. You neurodiverse folks need to understand that nobody's blaming you for this. It's not that you intend to make them feel invisible, but when you don't nod, when you don't smile, when you don't use empathic cues to let the other person know you're listening, they feel like you're not listening. Okay, then the next video conference, and these are small group conferences, by the way. There's like 7 or 8 people that join me in these discussions, so you do need to sign up ahead of time. And even if you only see 2 people signed up on Meetup, realize that there are other people who are signing up from the premium community forum. And so there really already may be a full group. If you get knocked out of a group because it's full, send me a message. I might be able to squeeze you in if there's a cancellation, or I definitely can get you into the next event. So the second conference for the month on October 9th is entitled The Despair of Being Misunderstood, Will It Ever End? So this is kind of heavy, when your loved one doesn't get you, you can fall into a deep depression. We know ourselves in relation to others, especially those we love, especially those who are our closest people. So when you're not understood, and even the other person is angry with you for saying something differently than the way they would say it, it's really heartbreaking. And if you keep trying, this is what I'm always telling my neurotypicals, if you keep, oh, hi, doctor, hi, Julie. If you keep trying to communicate using your neurotypical style or your neurodiverse style, and the other person has a different operating system, you're not going to connect. It doesn't work very well. It just doesn't work. So you're going to be misunderstood, and every time you're misunderstood, what we try to do is reconnect or find a way to be understood or to understand the other person. And when it doesn't work, we get depressed. Remember, as social beings, neurodiverse, neurotypical, doesn't matter, as social beings, we keep trying to belong. We want our group, we want our family, our clan, our community. We want to belong. And when we don't feel we belong, when we're misunderstood, and even treated badly for that misunderstanding, it's very frightening. And I can answer questions about that. Then the next thing in the month is, and I forgot to mention this earlier, October 10th is our free new member video call with Julie, and Julie's on the call today on our Dr. Kathy's office hours. Julie is in New Zealand, and she offers a once a month free video call for our meetup members and for our people in the premium group as well. And what she does is she just talks about all the things that, all the ways in which you can learn more. So she'll talk about the courses or the upcoming events, but she often just leaves it open to talk about, questions you have on your mind about how do you start exploring this world now that you understand that you live in a neurodivergent relationship. So many people never knew they lived in a neurodivergent relationship, or when they started figuring it out, they still thought I was the only one. And you're not the only one. And Julie will help you with that. She's been helping people for years in our group, and she's lived this life too. So as have I. You're going to be talking to people who know what it's like and who've been working it for a number of years to take back your life from this despair. Anyway, that's on October 10th. It's always, she's so good about this, even though she's in New Zealand. She sets it up so that it works for those of us on Pacific time and pretty much all the time zones across North America. And oh, by the way you join these calls is when you join the meetup group, when you become a member of the group, then you can go to the event calendar and register for one of these events, and then you'll get the link to attend. So if it's a video call, if it's a Zoom call, the link will be there for you on the event page as a member. The teleconference is just a telephone call, and there's just one number to call these days. They've set it up really, and all that information is posted there for you. Let's see. Okay, the next video call is on October 16th, and the title is Why the Meltdowns and the Silent Treatment Find Better Ways to Cope. Now, the thing is, I know that my neurotypicals say they have meltdowns too. It's not just people on the spectrum. But trying to understand the extreme anxiety that people on the spectrum walk around with is not easy. It's very stressful. So sometimes their sensory system is so overloaded that they just melt down. The silent treatment is also sometimes a function of that sensory overload, but a lot of times it's also just the best way they know how to cope with questions they can't answer, right? Seldom do neurotypicals get into silent treatment, but we certainly can get into meltdowns of our own where we're just fried and can't do anymore and need to take a break. So we'll talk about the better ways to cope than meltdowns and silent treatment. And then the last video conference for the month for our meetup group is Are You Letting Fear Crush Your Empathy? Are You Letting Fear Crush Your Empathy? That's October 30th. So what's interesting about this topic, I love this topic. So many people, especially people who are joining in on this Facebook Live today, are very empathic, highly empathic, nurturing, caring, sensitive people. And the problem is that you're aware of how others feel, you're aware of how you feel, but if you're afraid of how they feel, or you let your own fear get the best of you, you can't step up and do what's necessary to make things better. So this is an important conference. Is if you're going to use your empathy in the world, if you're going to use it smartly, then we want to step up to what I call radiant empathy, that ability to really be strong and capable and be there for others as well as yourself. So that's what that conference is about. Then I'm going to skip down here to the teleconference, which is, or go backwards, I guess. Our teleconference is on October 10th, and this will be a summary of the month's events. So again, it's Betrayed by Those I Love, How Can I Take Back My Life? In the teleconference, it's open to as many people as want to attend. It's not limited to 7 or 8 people. And the teleconference, you just dial in, you listen. I talk a little bit about this topic like I am today on the Facebook Live on Dr. Kathy's Office Hours. And then I open the queue up for people to call in and ask a question. So I also record the teleconference, and in all of the recordings are stored audio recordings. They're stored on the premium forum. So you do need to be a member of the premium forum to listen to the recordings. But I have to tell you, I mean, most people tell me that listening to these recordings is a lifesaver. That because they go back for several years. I've been recording for several years now, and all of that material is in the library on the premium forum, and it is never the same. I mean, because of who participates. When you ask me questions or you ask another member a question, what you're doing is bringing us into your world, into your reality, and that's going to be unique each time we have a meeting. It's a pretty amazing how the energy changes depending on who's there and who's asking the question. And let's see, then the other webinar, recorded webinar that I offer is on October 9th, so that's back earlier in the month, and this is the free member for those who are taking the online course for couples. And it's entitled, How Do I Manage Controlling People? So the webinar is a place where, and that forum is for both neurotypical and neurodiverse couples or individuals who want to take the course and learn more from me. I'm doing most of the videos. I'm doing a variety of different methods to help teach you about neurodivergent relationships. And you can order the course and watch it as often as you want. You can watch it with your partner, and you can go into the forum and talk with other members who are taking the course. And you can also come to the live webinar once a month and talk with other neurodiverse, neurotypical couples who are in the course. I record this audio only, and then I post it to the course. So this particular one, How Do I Manage Controlling People, will be available to course members only, but I want to let you know about it. And if you do want to know more about the course, just go to my website and you'll find out more information. And you can follow the link that I left, the course link there too, in the Facebook description. Okay, now let me see here. I'm going to answer some questions. I don't see any questions yet in the comment section. Please feel free to put questions up there if you have any questions about any of this material. I'll tell you one more thing, and that's that, or I'll probably tell you lots of more things, but one more thing right now is next month's theme is in November will be, do you just have empathy? How to make radiant empathy your superpower. So that's very similar to getting brave enough to use your empathy for the benefit of yourself and others. But I want to spend a whole month on that because I think that's pretty complex to do. Okay. Also, I'm excited about the fact that I have published my anniversary edition of Going Over the Edge. It's the first book I wrote on this topic. In 2009 it was published, and it's a bestseller in this field, in this tiny little field. It sells all over the world, wherever anybody can read English. It's not in another language, but it does sell all over the world. And so when that many years went by, and when the publisher just sort of disappeared, I said, well, what the heck? I'm going to rewrite this book. So I did rewrite it. It's about 50% longer than it was before. Sorry about that, but I wanted to add all the stuff in the intervening 15 years that, that I figured out, and that you figured out, right? Because as a result of my interacting with all of you, I learned a lot more about neurodivergent relationships. So if you get a chance, I'd love to have you see this book. And by the way, all of my books, I've got 5 books now, all 5 of them are on Amazon. They're also at my course website as ebooks, so you can download them as ebooks. And then on Amazon, they're in Kindle, print, and now audio. So you can read or listen to the book any way you want to that works for you. And I think Amazon does this deal where you can order, if you're a Kindle member, you can also get the audiobook. And then you can because the audiobook will not give you some of the diagrams and charts and things. So you can go back and look at it in your Kindle if you want to. Okay, I'm looking over here to see if there's any questions. Nobody's put anything down yet as a question they want to ask. They're all just watching and listening, which is fine. If you have something you want to say, let me know. So I use this, I might mention this too, I use this concept of taking back your life. That's my phrase for it, but what it's really being, it's about being the authentic you. Because when you haven't been, oh good, Coral, thank you for leaving a question. I'll get to that in just a second. Being your authentic self can slip away in this process of a neurodivergent relationship, because you're not being reinforced for who you feel you really are, right? You're not being reinforced. So what happens is that we can stop being true to ourselves and try to adapt to this other person. So what happens with neurodiverse people is they do a lot of masking to try to adapt. It's not really them. And for neurotypicals, you do a lot of sort of shutting down, accommodating, calming the other person, trying to follow the rules that they need you to follow, and then you're not true to yourself. So taking back your life in my world means that you're your authentic self as often as you possibly can be. And so there's a question here that says, do you have experience working with same-sex couples that are in a neurodivergent relationship or marriage? My wife is neurodivergent and I am neurotypical. And absolutely, I want you to know that in our group we have, clearly in Meetup and in the premium group and in the course, we have same-sex couples. And the issues are similar because you're still dealing with that neurodiverse way of thinking and the neurotypical way of thinking. It doesn't mean that somehow because the couple is, same-sex couple, that it's going to be dramatic differences. What I found anyway is that men and women all across the map can talk to each other about this. In fact, sometimes men are the neurotypical and they're saying, I don't know if a man or a husband is different than a wife who's with a wife that's on the spectrum. And I don't see much in the way of, the problems are pretty much the same. So, and you will meet other same-sex couples in our group, so that'll be helpful to you too, to be able to talk to each other. And then let's see here. I know there's another question down here. Oh, thanks, Julie. Julie says the book is a valuable resource. Polly, she says, can we talk about betrayal and how to recover? Yeah. Um, there's all kinds of betrayals, by the way. I'm not talking just about infidelity. Uh, but we can start with that one because these relationships are so stressful that sometimes people do reach out. Sometimes people reach out for love from somebody else, risking the cohesiveness of their marriage. But if we can forgive ourselves or forgive the other person, we do a lot better. That's sort of the extreme betrayal, but there's other betrayals too. And if we view it as a betrayal, then we don't get anywhere. If you view it as the other person just not having the right answers, it works better. Or if you're the person who doesn't have the right answers, right? It works a lot better. Okay, recovering from it. Well, I think it can take years, actually. It's so painful to be let down by somebody you care for that deeply that we can go into this unhealthy place where we feel victimized. It doesn't mean that you weren't victimized, okay? It doesn't mean that somebody didn't do wrong by you. But if you stay in that place that I'm not part of this, or I didn't cause this, then you feel really helpless. Instead, it's better to take your life back and to say, I'm going to do all that I'm capable of, even if I can't repair whatever went on with my loved one. But we'll get back to that one in just a minute, because there's another question here. Helen, what would be a communication system or style that would work with neurodiverse people? Oh, I love this question, because I'm getting ready. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm about halfway finished with my course on communication, and I call it Conversational Aspergian. I got this title from a neurodiverse client of mine who was always cracking jokes that were a little odd, but very funny. And they were odd to me because they were neurodiverse jokes, if that makes any sense. His humor was amazing. And he said that he thought what I should do is come up with an app that would be Conversational Aspergian based on the kind of jokes he was telling and, communication style. So the communication system that works it's easier, I think, I hate to say this, but it's easier for neurotypicals to adapt into a neurodiverse communication style than vice versa, because you can more quickly just drop into that transactional approach that they use. They're listening to your words, they want an answer to the question, they want to move on when the question is answered. That's what neurodiverse people. On the other hand, your neurotypical loved ones don't feel very good if you don't make time to get into what it is that they're feeling and thinking. They want to know that you want to step into their world, because that's what neurotypicals do. We step into each other's worlds, understand where that person is coming from, share where we're coming from, and exchange connection. So it isn't just about answering a question. With neurodiverse people, what I recommend is that you slow down and take notes, actual written notes. If you slow down, you might actually hear where your neurotypical is coming from. It just may go in your head, sit there for a minute, and then make sense. Or you might have to go back later in the afternoon and say, hey, when we were talking, I think I missed something that was important to you, but I got it an hour later. Can we talk now? Your neurotypical loved one would allow that. Annalisa says, how do you confront the betrayal? Well, with as little blame as possible, for sure, but it is important to stand up for yourself, because just because the other person was overwhelmed or whatever, distressed, doesn't give them the right to be abusive. And betrayal is abusive. Sometimes they don't know they're betraying you. I get that, but it doesn't matter. You still have to be accountable for your actions, right? You may not totally understand what's going on, but you have to be accountable. So, I mean, in order to confront your loved one with betrayal, you have to be strong enough that it's going to turn out the way it's going to turn out. You know, you need to be true to yourself, that you don't want to be living with this betrayal or this secret, whatever it happens to be. You don't want to have to live with that and never have it, spoken about. But just because you confront the person with the betrayal doesn't mean it's going to get fixed, right? You may still have this grave misunderstanding, and then you have to decide how much of this I can endure, or is it time for me to move on? That's the part about being empathic and being courageous enough to take on the dysfunction. You have to be courageous enough to do this regardless of where it takes you. And there's all kinds of variables. Obviously, you've got children, you've got finances, you've got housing concerns. There's lots of reasons that you might take your time to confront a betrayal, but if it's a true betrayal that's really not honest and loving and kind, well, why wouldn't you confront it and get it out there in the open and either move on or repair it? So Coral says, thank you for answering my previous question. When my spouse has a meltdown, I think it's a meltdown, she often gets extremely over-the-top angry. She threatens ending our relationship and says horrible things to me. Is this common, and how can I avoid this? Yes, it's common, absolutely, and you can avoid it. Maybe not avoid it, but you can put a stop to it. This is a type of betrayal, Coral. I want other people to know that too. It is a betrayal to have your loved one scream at you and call you foul names. They have a responsibility to learn how to manage their emotional side, right? Just because they might have trouble with that doesn't mean that they can't learn to do better, right? So you have to have this attitude that, nope, this is abuse and I'm not putting up with it because it is abuse, all right? Secondly, it's not easy to fix that. It is up to the person who has the meltdowns, but the loving partner can just say, no, stop. Now, I realize that you can't yell stop, but you can say stop. You can have your overnight bag packed and said, I'm going to a hotel. I'm not putting up with this. Take care, Julie. So does it make sense that it feels like when somebody has a meltdown that's that severe and they're yelling at you and they're calling you names, it feels like you can't make them stop. But honestly, most people on the spectrum who have these meltdowns will stop if you say stop. Stop. This is not okay with me. I'm leaving now. A lot of times they'll go, what? What? Because sometimes they're not aware of how out of control they are, right? Or because you've put up with it for a few years, they may think that it's really not as bad as it appears. Does that make sense? So, I think you could have a discussion with your partner before there's a meltdown and say, I want to have an agreement that we have, that it's okay for me to leave or to ask you to leave the room, the house, the restaurant, if there's a meltdown, because I don't want to experience this abuse and I don't want you to be abusive. It doesn't feel good to them either. Now, why do they threaten to end the relationship? Because it feels so hard to resolve these problems when you don't really understand neurodivergence. Most people don't understand it. Most people really just are overwhelmed by it. So the threats to get a divorce or to leave you are cruel. Really, that's abuse. But that's because we feel like I just want this problem to go away. right? I just want the problem to go away, and then you chase your loved one away. Yeah, Coral says 10 years of putting up with this. You know, that's where the empathy comes in. Empathic people need to stop putting up with abuse. Just because you understand why they're distressed doesn't mean you allow it any more than you would with a child. Right? With children, it's the same. You can say, got it. I know you're upset, but you can't call mommy names. You can't scream at your father. No, it's not okay. But then we have to be willing to remove ourselves, because we can put a child in timeout. You can't put an adult in timeout, but we can remove ourselves from the abuse. So one of my favorite stories about this is with a client of mine who's on the spectrum, and he asked his girlfriend to come in for one last session because she'd had it. She wanted it out. And you know, she was complaining that he yells at her and screams at her, and she says, I just can't take it anymore. And he said, well, yeah, but I'm doing better. I don't do it as much. And I told him, I said, look, once is enough. It doesn't matter if you only scream at her, you know, 2 days out of the month. It doesn't matter. It's still too much. And he kind of accepted that was probably true, but, you know, and he was getting better, but it doesn't matter. It's still wearing on her. And so I asked him, I said, look, you must have disagreements at work. You're a professional man. You must have disagreements at work. How do you handle them? Do you yell? Do you call people names? Do you stomp out of the room? And he goes, no, we don't do that. I said, well, how do you solve those disagreements at work? I mean, you must get riled up a little bit. He goes, I don't know. I guess we just take care of it. We just talk about it, or we let it go, or whatever. So I said, well, look, if you can do that at work, I bet you could do it at home. You could use the same tools. And I started to explain what some of those tools might be. And he said, wait, I have to write this down. This is profound. He said, this is profound. I want to write it down. And I thought, you know, that's why I think that people on the spectrum with meltdowns don't really want to be that out of control. Neurotypicals don't want to be that out of control. But maybe we need to write down some of the tools we already use in other settings and use them at home with our loved ones. So Kristen says, how do I get around this issue that keeps happening between my husband and I? We are recently separated, and what keeps coming up over and over again is that he misinterprets my feelings and intentions. He thinks that I am making certain decisions about our son because I'm angry with him to meet my own needs. He can't seem to, okay, this is a good one. He can't seem to see that I'm making the needs of my son my priority and communicating our son's needs to him based on what my son has communicated to me. No matter what I do, he just can't seem to see the reality who I really am as a person. Okay, so there's two things kind of weaving together here. I'm going to point out that Kristen's codependency. But this is what we talked about this week in one of our video conferences. What she's doing is stepping in and helping her son, helping her husband understand her son. The problem is that he doesn't understand, and he keeps attacking her. And then she tries more, I suspect, I'm not there, but I bet she tries more to explain more what's really going on. The more work you do for the other person, the other parent, that's codependency. All right, and it's not healthy. Now, why does he think you're angry? Because if he's on the spectrum, he tends to think of everything as transactional or black and white. So you might be being firm with your son, but not angry with him. Or you might be angry with him, but still doing what you feel is best for him. Because it's complex. Parenting is complex. Your spouse may only be aware of the emotional state, not of the bigger picture of what really parenting is required of us. So, how do you intervene? Instead of continuing to explain to your spouse what the parenting issue is while you're parenting, it's good to talk about that with a couples therapist. And as a therapist myself, I am frequently asking the neurodiverse person to trust that their neurotypical is probably more aware of the multidimensional reality of parenting. Doesn't mean they love the child more, but they're probably better at figuring that out. So let's see, what else did she say? She said some more here. Right, and then she says, my son will actually communicate the exact same thing to him that I do, and he reacts completely differently. And yeah, so the reason you're getting resistance, Kristen, is because you're showing him up. Because, he loves your child, our child, right? He wants to do the right thing, but you're critical of his parenting, makes him feel bad. But it doesn't matter, you still got to do the right thing. You can't have him parenting in a way that isn't effective or is harmful. So that's something the therapist has to help you with. And, by the way, if you're strong, if you use your empathy to understand that he's just confused and scared or feels bad about himself, that's good. But you could be brave enough to say, regardless of how badly you feel, right now, this is an important parenting moment, and I'm not going to let you botch it. I mean, it's kind of odd to say something like that, but I'm just not going to let you do that. So Helen says, how do we confront their ASD natural bent when they refuse and deny, they don't agree or own up to it? So what Helen's talking about is what neurotypicals do is bring up a problem. I want to talk to you about something. The neurodiverse person, their radar goes up. Oh no, I'm going to be blamed. Right? I'm going to be picked on. I did something wrong again. That's where they go with that. So it's difficult to talk about something. You might say something, neurotypicals believe that if we bring up a problem, the other person's going to want to work it out with us. And that's not very transactional. So, but you can make it more transactional by saying, you know me, I'm going to bring up something that's a problem, but I'm just as guilty of making this not work as you are. I just need to work it out with you, please. Can you work with me and come up with some ideas? If you give them a setting, a platform, it might be better, right? If, as Helen is saying, how do you confront their ASD natural bent? That's not going to work. But it would help in therapy if the therapist talked about that's a transactional approach. That's a neurodiverse way of talking about things. Because generally the therapist it doesn't feel as if they're being blamed by the therapist. The therapist is just trying to educate and coach. Hope that makes sense. If you got another question about that, let me know. And then Annalisa, she says, my neurodiverse husband has become very popular among outside women who are in financial need. I feel that he's being manipulated, but he says that they love who he is, not his pocket. I'm hurt, but I'm so afraid. Yes, I'm going to tell you, this is not unusual. Sadly, many people, neurodiverse folks, actually are taken advantage of in this way, where they give money to people, not necessarily to other women or other love interests, that sort of thing, but they just feel good. That's a transactional thing they can do. And I've had many people get stuck in this situation, or it's not always about money. Sometimes it's about, I had a friend on the spectrum who would give somebody a ride every time they asked for it, even if it meant she had to not go into work and drive clear across town to help this person get where they were going. She didn't know how to say, I can't today, I have to go to work. So she got manipulated over and over and over again. And it seems odd to have this problem, but this inability to recognize the social reciprocity is how they get themselves in this bind. Now, trying to convince your spouse, Annalisa, that he is being taken advantage of, that probably isn't the way to go. But you could talk in therapy or on your own. You could talk about, my rule is that we don't give money to anybody else outside of our family, or you have to run it by me as well because we are a married couple after all. I mean, you could try giving them the rule, but it probably feels so dang good to have people who like him because he takes care of them financially. It's hard to let that one go. We can talk more about this, but I want you to know these problems are very common. The betrayal, the yelling and screaming and threatening divorce, the giving money away, listening to the son but not to the mom who's his co-partner and co-parent. These are problems that you see that make us feel betrayed, make us feel like the other person doesn't get what's important or doesn't believe in us or doesn't trust us to help have their back, right? And we want somebody who has our back. That's hard when it feels like we don't have somebody who has our back. So I'm looking to see if there's anybody else got a comment here. Okay, I don't think so. If you are thinking about asking a question, or you watch this video later, by the way, the video will be going up on YouTube, not just Facebook. Please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section after the recording ends as well, because I will answer those questions. I go through, I get notified when there's new material, new questions that are coming up, or somebody has something. I'm happy to answer it, or you can certainly send me a message. And, I didn't post it, but if you go to my website, there's a link to leave a question for Dr. Kathy's office hours throughout the month, and I'll bring it up on the Facebook Live. I didn't do that today. I wonder if I have time. I have time maybe, unless somebody else has a question for me, but let's see here. But if you want to leave a question and make sure I answer it next Facebook Live, please do that. Okay, so here's one. I appreciate all the help and advice you share with those of us who find ourselves in a difficult relationship due to a spouse being on the spectrum. My husband is in his early 70s. I've noticed that he seems to have more difficulty communicating with me. He thinks he said something he didn't. He has a harder time listening and comprehending the things I say, and he doesn't seem to retain things as well. He also seems more clumsy. He used to think his dad reminded me a lot of Mr. Magoo. I'm beginning to see the same traits in my husband. Does normal aging affect the prefrontal cortex in a way that makes Asperger's apparent or stronger? Do you know how many times people ask me this? We have lots of members of our group who are in their 70s. And I get asked this question a lot, and there isn't any definitive research on this, but in general, I would say, well, why wouldn't aging affect thinking, right? And so it's not so much that the brain is aging as much as it's a lot of work being neurodiverse and thinking things through and hearing something but not understanding it for 20 minutes. That's alexithymia. So I think that we all sort of wear down after a while, but I think people on the spectrum often will just go, it's too hard, I just don't want to do it anymore. Isn't it good enough that, we're getting along okay? That Mr. Magoo thing she's talking about, remember, high-functioning autism is defined by an executive dysfunction. That's one of the symptoms. The inability to track the context, to understand the priorities, to hear a comment from you and understand it's coming from you and means something differently than if it's coming from, Annalisa over there. those executive function problems slow people down. That's why I say take notes. Go back and talk about it over again. Send an email after you've thought about it, right? So I don't know the research on aging per se, but I do suspect that no matter how old somebody is, if they haven't acquired all of these other tools earlier on, they're really not going to get better at communicating. They need to learn the tools. Hope that answers the question. And then, let's see here. Make sure I'm not missing somebody. So this one says, I'm new in trying to understand this Asperger world, and I have a question. I suspect that my mother had Asperger's, but my sister and I survived many difficult situations and managed to move forward in life thanks to her constant efforts to give us what we needed to study and have a better life. She worked hard without complaining. Well, actually, she constantly complained about the noise, the smells, and the heat, but she didn't get angry with us, and she showed us her love in many ways. But I realized that there is something that I miss in the relationship all my life, some kind of connection, and I wonder if it has to do with the conversation. And so this is another way of looking at Asperger's. There are people who do not rage, who don't have meltdowns, right? But are still on the spectrum. This mother worked very hard to provide well for her children, yet her daughters still perceived mom's sensitivity to noise and textures and things like that. So they were aware that she was different. They were also aware, at least this woman says she was aware, that we didn't quite have a conversation. And this is one of the stories that I've written about for myself as well. My mother was very young when she passed away. She was 48 when she was diagnosed with cancer, and she died at 49. And I was 25, so I went to my therapist. And I was a brand new, fresh out of graduate school social worker. I went to a therapist and I said, I just want to deal with the distress that this is causing me, that my mother's going to die, and she with her terminal illness. And the therapist was really kind. He said, it's normal for you to grieve. It's normal for you to be upset that you're going to lose your mother, especially so young for both of you. And I was sort of comforted by that, but it didn't really help. And it took me years to realize that my mother was on the autism spectrum. I didn't know that when I was 25. In fact, I didn't know until I was in my 40s. And she had already passed away by then. And what I realized that I was asking this therapist is I was realizing that I was telling him my mother was going to die. My mother also was a great mom. She fed us the best food. We had a beautiful home. Well, a loving home in many ways. But my mother was going to die before we ever connected. She was going to die, and that's how I felt. We never connected. So let's see here. Ollie says, oh good, hi Ollie, haven't seen you for a while. How would you address someone who is neurodiverse, refuses to acknowledge they can do better by learning the skills to acknowledge neurotypical feelings, such as them saying, this is who I am? So what she's talking about is I teach workarounds. I teach a workaround for a neurodiverse person to say something like, I probably am missing something, you seem really sad, you know me, I'm on the spectrum, I make that mistake, let's try this again. That's a repair. It's a lot to say, it's a mouthful, but you neurotypicals would accept it. The problem is that a lot of neurodiverse people think that's extra, that's fluff, that's window dressing. It's not necessary, but it is necessary. So the therapist has to help them with that. And it's tough when they really just feel like it's an extra thing that's not important. But you're important. You're important enough that you should be treated that way. And yeah, Sherry's also saying that the aging issue is there. Let's see here. Helen says he's tired all the time and wants to sleep and cannot do simple something when he has a Ph.D. Right. So just because someone's got IQ points in the left brain, logical, mathematical intelligence, doesn't mean they have IQ points when it comes to interpersonal relationships. And it's really tough for people on the spectrum to know that they don't know something. It's hard to say, well, you're telling me this, but, could just be you. Right. Annalisa says, I'm sorry that you, to Dr. Kathy, that you'd never connected with your mom. That's my fear, that this might happen to me and my husband. Absolutely. What everybody wants is to feel that loving connection. But with neurodiverse folks, they fail to speak our conversational, interpersonal language often enough so we feel disconnected and unloved, invisible, right? Coral says, do neurodivergent, or she means neurodiverse, individuals remember clearly what happens during meltdown, for instance, harsh words, or that they hate you? Yes, they can remember that stuff, but they don't remember it in relation to you. So, transactional people store their memories different than interactional people do. So neurotypicals interactional. We remember painfully having said something to somebody we care about. We can feel their pain. And even though at the time we felt perfectly justified hollering at them, later we just go, oh, we have to fix that. They put it aside. They may apologize for the behavior, but they expect the apology to be enough. As opposed to the apology helps, but we would like more in the way of a repair, like a change in behavior or an agreement to talk through the disagreement to a solution, as opposed to, well, I said I was sorry, isn't that enough? No, it's not enough. I want a solution too. And if you think about parenting, it's the same with the kids, right? The kids will say, I'm sorry. And you're going, yeah, okay, I'm glad, but I expect you to do something about it. That's repairing the relationship. Okay, I gotta go, but I hope that you listen to this call again and that you get some hope from it. We talked about how stressful it is, but if you sign up for the meetup group and attend these group sessions, you're going to learn a lot too, and you're not going to feel so alone. You may not be able to get that information over to your partner, but you will be able to know more that you're not alone with this distress. I also want to reassure you neurodiverse folks, take my course, read my books. I have lots of neurodiverse people who tell me that until they read my books, they had no idea what was going on in their relationships, and now they do. Doesn't mean that they have it all fixed, but at least they have a beginning. Okay, take care everybody. We'll see you next month.